Greg, we have a lot of speculation. I talked about a Yale law professor yesterday who said the president has no powers to use right now in terms of special emergencies, and the military, if they are deployed, they should consider mutinying against the commander-in-chief. I read that person, the Riot Act. You are the legal consummate professional. What can he and what can he not do when it comes to this issue?
Oh, he's absolutely empowered to do it. I don't know who the Yale University law professor is, but his students aren't getting a very good education if that's his judgment.
Ackerman. It was Professor Ackerman at Yale.
Okay. Well, I've never heard of the guy. He ought to remain in obscurity. Look, in 1976, Congress delegated to the president broad powers to declare emergencies, and he has complete discretion, unfettered authority to do it. Members of Congress can, of course, complain and disagree all they want over what really is a crisis or an emergency, but they gave away the power to the president. So once he invokes a national emergency, and many past presidents have to deal with foreign threats, then he invokes a specific law. It's called construction authority. This is a law Congress passed. It's been on the books for a long time. And it's a very simple law. And it says that when the president declares a national emergency, he can direct the Secretary of Defense to undertake military construction projects by diverting other resources to that new project, the wall. So there are two, statutory authorizations for the president to do this. And look at what other past presidents have done. Barack Obama, for instance, declared a national emergency with respect to our relations with South Sudan and Burundi, and several other countries that most Americans have never heard of. So,
he even did it with regards to swine flu. Obama actually.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So it's foreign affairs, it's domestic. We have an article going up right now at the sebgorka.com, America First's website, where we actually list the 31 current existing emergency acts that have been put in place with regards to Iran, Cuba, you name it. So the idea that this is some kind of military junta taking over. Okay, so he can do it, Greg. It's clear he can do it. But what's going to happen if he does? There'll be the Ninth Circus Court that will challenge it, and then are we going to have to play a game and wait until it gets up to the Supreme Court?
Oh, probably. I mean, you've got people like Senator Kamala Harris, who's running for president, it appears, and she wants to use this as a wedge issue to support her candidacy, to draw attention to herself. She's vowed to sue the president over this. She has no legal basis to do it. Unfortunately, in America, Seb, anybody can file a lawsuit.
Right.
Proving it to judges or in a court of law is a separate challenge. And it would be you might be able to convince some liberal judge to ignore the statutes I've identified and for political reasons rule against the president. But in the end, the president would win.
Would he have to wait until it reached to the Supreme Court to start the building?
Well, he can start the building immediately. Now, let's assume some crazy liberal judge in the Ninth Circuit District issues an injunction. Then the president would go to the Supreme Court and, citing, exigent circumstances, seek an expedited hearing before the Supreme Court, much the same way,
with the travel ban, right?
With the travel ban, that's right.
And from what we hear today, from what the president has said and tweeted already in the last 24 hours, it does look increasingly as if he's going to take that route, don't you think?
Oh, he absolutely should. And so, a lot of people now are saying in Congress and the media, well, where does the money come from? Are you kidding? That's the easy part. He has various options available. He's not just limited to the military budget, although that current budget is $700 billion.
Right.
So $5 billion is a pittance. There are other discretionary funds he could utilize. Disaster relief dedicated to the Army Corps of Engineers. They have a budget just on their construction projects of $14 billion. But look, not every dollar in the $1.3 trillion omnibus spending bill passed several months ago is earmarked for specific projects. There are general funds that may be used for various purposes, and the president has the latitude and discretion to spend that money as he sees fit.
Now I have to ask you in the last minute we have in this segment to step back and give me your appraisal of how your colleagues have dealt with this issue. Apart from your coverage on Sean's show, on the Hannity show, how has the rest of the media dealt with this question of whether the president can do this? In 30 seconds, give them a grade, Gregg Jarrett.
Oh, they get an F. I mean, most of them are ignorant of history. They're certainly ignorant of the law. But, you know, you don't have to be a lawyer to just Google the law, for goodness sakes. It's easy to comprehend. So I give them an F. If I could give a lower grade than that, I'd do it.
Is it ignorance or is it more than that?
Oh, it's bias. You know, they don't want to look up the law because they know it's against the argument they're trying to make, which is teased by hope out of ignorance and bias.
This is why you are our guest today, Gregg Jarrett, legal analyst for Fox, who will be talking about the deep state and the Russia hoax next. It is the clarity you bring to these discussions, cutting through the fog of fake news. Stay on the line. I'm Sebastian Gorka. And you are listening to America First with me, Sebastian Gorka. And our guest is none other than Gregg Jarrett. Follow him on Twitter at Gregg Jarrett, GRRTT. And now we're going to move from the powers the president has in times of national emergency to a 2-year-long farrago, the Russia hoax, which is a great title for a book, Greg. Russia hoax. We should write a book called. No, you've already done it. Sorry. Russia hoax. I don't know if it's still number one. It's been number one for months and months and months. You and Judge Janine have been swapping each other out. You've also just written an article on Rod Rosenstein and his massive conflicts of interest. Tell us why somebody who is a witness shouldn't be in charge of an investigation, or does that seem like too much common sense?
Oh, it's a violation of the Code of Professional Responsibility and federal regulations that govern the Department of Justice, and Rosenstein ignored it with impunity. He volunteered to author the memo advocating the termination of James Comey when the president abided by it and fired Comey. The memo became public. Rosenstein began to get heat over it, and he got angry about it. So that's when, according to the New York Times, he proposed wearing a wire to secretly record the president and recruited cabinet members to try to depose the president under the 25th Amendment, which is a severe abuse of power and the amendment itself. So, you know, Rosenstein not only acted in that way, but having authored the memo, he was interviewed as a witness by the special counsel, and yet he insists on presiding over the very case in which he is a key witness. I mean, you can't think of more egregious conflicts of interest than Rod Rosenstein.
And apparently he'll be stepping down imminently when the new Attorney General gets sworn in, but hopefully he won't get away scot-free with what he's done. In the last few minutes, for the average citizen who doesn't live in the swamp, who believes he'll never be the subject of a grand jury investigation, what do they still need to know? What's the one most disturbing thing about this whole Russia hoax? They still need to buy your book, but what do they need to know, Greg?
Well, by the way, the paperback version of the book, The Russia Hoax, comes out a month from now. You can order it on Amazon.com, and it is an updated version with new information and evidence in it. But the bottom line is, under the leadership of people like Rod Rosenstein and James Comey and others at the Department of Justice and the FBI, Americans should be frightened. They should be frightened that the limitless power of the federal government can come after you and ruin you personally and financially, even though you have done nothing wrong. Just ask General Michael Flynn, who told the truth and was prosecuted for lying. That is the thuggish tactics of federal prosecutors, and it should frighten every American to their core.
In the 60 seconds we have left, I'm going to ask you the question that I get asked everywhere when I travel the country giving speeches. Are any of these people going to jail, Greg?
I'm optimistic that William Barr, once sworn in as the new Attorney General, will treat the law equitably. Nobody's above the law. If the law enforcers became the lawbreakers, I'm confident that Barr will gather together the evidence and take action, if that means appointing another special counsel or simply presenting the evidence to a federal grand jury. Let them decide. There is plenty of evidence of wrongdoing on the part of the people I've identified and who are in my book, The Russia Hoax.
Well, you heard it here. Not only is it one of the best-selling books in America right now, the paperback will be out momentarily, and it will be updated along with Dan Bongino's book and the work of Sarah Carter, our other colleague at Fox. This is the ground truth of what is going on. That is Gregg Jarrett. Follow him on Twitter. And remember, this is about whether or not Lady Justice wears a blindfold.